And welcome back to another GACC podcast where we're going to be discussing games, anime, computers, and collectibles, but not necessarily all those in a week. I am still your host, Harrison, and to my left...
Hi, I'm Faust.
And to my right...
Hi, I'm Sean King.
And we are going to be talking about everything that's kind of happened in the last week or so that interests us in, realms of whatnot that's nerdiness.
Whatever caught our attention, essentially.
Yeah.
So, first off, Sean...
Yes.
What do you do since you're our guest?
Well, I do animation. Specifically, I am the creator of the series My Little Hood.
Okay. And what's your channel called?
Sandy Mesa Animation Studios.
And you are on
VidMe. And I also do have a YouTube channel. I've not really updated it in a long time. I'll probably post like clips on it from like time to time.
Okay. So the animations you're doing for this My Little Hood. So it's My Little Ponies, but what's the concept behind it?
Oh, it's besides the obvious fact that it's ponies, it basically revolves around the life of two people who are sharing a house in Northwest Albuquerque specifically, and their names are Scott and Colin.
Okay.
I don't know why, but for some reason they're female, even though their names are Scott and Colin.
It works nowadays.
It works nowadays.
Yes.
At least that,
So, what are you using to do the animation with?
I'm using Source Filmmaker.
Okay. How's any particular reason for using the Source Filmmaker?
I use Source Filmmaker specifically because I think it's like easier seeing it rendered.
Okay.
Instead of just like having like it all set up, like you don't know how it's gonna like come out once you render it.
Okay. That's a good reason for using the Source Filmmakers, because you can see it, in real time, and a lot of the assets are already there.
Yeah.
So it
really helped me to get a good vision of what this thing is going to look like once I put it out.
Okay.
Oh, it's always best to find the tools that work for you.
Yeah.
And instead of having to fight with whatever everybody else is using.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even then, Source Filmmaker is still a very intricate and complex
it is
system.
It's still very hard to do something good in Source Filmmaker. I mean,
I mean, you could make weird Shrek animations in it.
Yeah, I've seen. What was one that I think one of the earliest ones I remember from Source Filmmaker is I remember seeing somebody did Stacy's mom.
Oh,
it's a animation.
Oh, yeah.
Animation in Source Filmmaker using Alex and the G-Man, and so it was very silly faces and whatnot, but I don't even think they had like lips moving or anything else like this. And then you watch Valve doing their entire Meet the Team for Team Fortress 2 series, and you're just like, the difference is just like,
I know
it shows what you can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, it really shows. Probably the other thing too is that with Source Filmmaker, there's not like the big video editing stuff necessarily that comes with it. Mm-hmm. So if you're just making it using Source Filmmaker, it's not likely going to turn out great as if you like actually did like the editing in like a program like I use, Cyberlink Power Director.
Okay. But it is good enough for like prime time on the internet. I mean,
exactly.
Get you the source and stuff.
Yeah.
I seem to think that Source Filmmaker, by my assumption, is more about model control and being able to have more manipulation over the puppetry.
Yeah,
as
exactly.
As opposed to like something like Gary's mod, where all you really do is just pose the ragdolls.
It's just like you're dragging the model around.
So you have more control over the bones and you have more control over the bones and their positions or the facial animation.
Yeah, I like that too.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's a whole bunch of resources out there, so it's not just the models from like Valve games.
Yeah,
You can-
exactly. I like that too, actually.
yeah.
And some of the resources that people make are actually really creative.
Yeah, I've seen that. There's been there's a huge workshop community behind it where people have done some amazing things with it. You know, so it's been it's a really neat thing to do. So, you know, wonderful tool to use.
It is.
Versus trying to do it in like CAD or Blender or
Yeah.
Light.
Oh, man.
Such a
Light
Blender.
Studio.
Yeah.
Blender, I can confess to that.
Yeah, I remember messing around with ZBrush. I actually managed to find a trial copy of it,
Ew.
and that's some industry standard stuff.
Yeah.
ZBrush.
And I mean, it seems like a really great thing if you learn how to use it.
Yeah,
but just looking at it, just poking at it.
It's like a little intimidating. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's because most people think that they have to use everything that's in a program like that, when really it's more 80% of the work is done with about 20% of the program.
Yeah.
So you really don't use all of the flashy stuff because those are all meant for specific things.
Well, let's get into talking about some of the other things that people use. You know, and we're going to talk about actually drones.
Oh boy.
Drones.
Yeah. So apparently, in the last couple weeks, so historically, it's been a little bit now. Your amateur, just everyday person has needed to register their drone with the FCC as a hobbyist to be able to fly it. And they've had like a lot of people basically register. I don't remember how many it is. It's like hundreds of thousands at this point. But there's been a case going on against this for a while, and finally, it's been decided that you can, if you're getting a new drone in the U.S. to fly non-commercially, just as a hobbyist, you no longer have to register the drone with the FAA. And basically, that was one of the biggest gripes for hobbyists, you know, was for flying these little drones, because it didn't necessarily matter the size of it. It could be just a little one or even the bigger ones.
Yeah, like those big ones. I've seen like some big ones like at like at Best Buy or like Sam's Club.
The big backpack ones.
Yeah.
Those things look amazing.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea that the people don't have to register for these things. I mean, these are devices, whether they're hobbyist or just recreational or whatever. It's still gives somebody the ability to invade airspace with certain capabilities. And nowadays, these drones are even sold with cameras already integrated.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so to have this kind of thing just available to anybody who wants to buy it without any sort of licensure, without even having a serial number or a way that you can say hold them accountable, because it's like, hey, you flew your drone and got some compromising pictures somewhere somehow.
Yeah.
And invaded somebody's personal privacy.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, they're not registered. There's going to be just 1,000 of them out there. I mean, I was already looking into registering my drone with the FAA, and I haven't even built it yet. I'm planning just 3D print the whole thing.
Wow.
So, you know, I still think that even if you don't buy one commercially, if you just put one together yourself, you still have to make sure, I mean, it gives it regulation so that privacy is protected, but B, it makes it so that those things have to be certified, that they have to be actually operational and not just fall out of the sky onto somebody.
I would kind of agree with you. I mean, it is like the licensure of drones is kind of a tricky subject, because you don't want to like regulate it to the point where it's like where it's like so frustrating. It's like feels like every little thing in the process is so slow. But then you also have to kind of have. But then you can't like have it so that it's like, go fly out your drones. You know what I mean? Because you'll have those incidents where if you're like out near per se the airport, there could be a good chance that it might like, you know what I mean?
Well, I think the nice thing about all this is, I mean, I can see both of it. One is, no, it's just a hobby thing. You should not necessarily have to register it. But at the same point, their program that they put together was used to also educate the hobbyist of the rules regarding drones, such as privacy, the areas that you can go fly it in. Because I mean, like around airports or air bases, there's like it's like, I don't even think it's 5 miles, but there's like a couple miles around those places that you're not allowed to fly drones. And so the other thing they were using the registration for was to help law enforcement track down the owner if the drone happened to go into an area that wasn't supposed to.
Yep.
So that way that they could be basically
And
cited.
it's a favorite story of mine, but apparently, like, we already had reports of organized crime in Hong Kong utilizing drone technology to carry contraband, weapons and drugs.
Oh yeah.
And so the police force in Hong Kong bought a whole fleet of larger drones that were designed to capture these drones. And so in response, the organized criminals actually developed attack drones to attack the police drones. And there's this whole aerial battle being waged over the streets of Hong Kong.
Of cat and mouse, basically.
Cat and mouse with the drones. And I mean, that's just an amazing thing. It's like, well, we're part of the future here. But still, if those drones were regulated, if they had some sort of serial number or transponder or licensure.
Yeah. Like, I mean, not like a super complicated process, but good enough so that we don't like have these kinds of incidents. You know what I mean?
Well, they need to be acknowledged as serious pieces of technology.
Yeah, they
essentially.
are.
Yes.
And it's not, I mean, yeah, even the ones that just kind of like sit on your wrist and you sort of fly them for about 10 minutes and they run out of battery. It's still, these things have an amazing amount of potential for mayhem and misuse.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, but...
And what's interesting is actually the drone industry, like the drone producer industry, is actually upset that these rules got overturned by the case brought by a hobbyist.
Interesting.
Yeah, because the thing is they understand that the drone manufacturers understand that if people are not flying them properly, or if they're using for malicious things, it gives drones a bad PR image.
Yeah.
So the rules, which they worked with the FAA to help establish and modernize the rules, also helps prevent these bad PR things. Because at that point, if somebody's improperly flying a drone or using it for malicious intent, they can just turn around and go, well, that's the person. We actually have this program and all to educate and all with the FAA. Without that being there now, it's like, how do you educate people?
Yeah, exactly.
For the drones.
Yeah, and it's sort of giving people license to misuse it.
Yeah,
just because it's almost demanding that they do so because they don't have any limitation or accountability anymore.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And like I said, I can see it both ways because I mean it's a couple $100 toy.
On the cheap end.
On the cheap end.
Exactly.
Well, it's the same with like the model aircrafts and everything like this. I mean, the thing is people have been making model helicopters, model planes, and they've been flying them for quite some time without having to register them. And the drone is just an advanced version of a helicopter. That's a little bit easier.
The thing about it is the drones have an increased mobility and capability, whereas the model airplanes and such have a very inbuilt limitation where you can actually fly them safely, because they need a wider range. They need to be able to not have any radio frequency interfering with your control of the vehicle. In some cases, these things actually use liquid fuel instead of battery, and so you need to be able to be a place where you can actually, if it does crash, there is nobody around that's going to get hit with the fireball or hurt or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's just not a lot to say that you should be flying an aircraft like that in a neighborhood or even in a large park, because there's still power lines and trees, and now people flying their drones. But
I can fly my kite in a park without having to.
Actually, that's not recommended even.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. But that's the argument type thing.
No fun. Sorry. Not in the parks. No fun. No kites, no planes, no drones.
But yeah, I mean, it's like even I can see.
You have to get a kite license.
Yeah, that's the next thing they're going to go after. They're going to go after my kite.
Actually, some of those professional kites are actually pretty lethal. Did you know this?
They can probably put cameras on those too nowadays.
Yeah, probably.
But it's like I can see. I mean, it's going to be an interesting battle going forward because you have your hobbyist, your responsible hobbyist, but all it takes is a few jerks. They're going to change it around because it's like
one bad apple always spoils the bunch.
Yeah,
that's what happens.
So I mean, was it Casey Neistat even is actually underneath investigation in New York because of his drone flights. So he's not going to be flying drones for a bit.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah. Apparently, there's been some snafus with that in his drones, because I mean his drones, he flew them high, you know.
Oh yeah.
You know, for all his time lapses and all his drone flights.
Oh yeah. I mean, kind of maybe a little expected when it comes to like New York City, but still, there's got to be like you got to have some safety with that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I don't necessarily even know what all the specific rules are for like New York City or New York, because, well, quite frankly, who cares about New York? But I thought it was an interesting thing. It's like here's even a person who professionally flies drones and uses the footage all the time, and he is even underneath trouble for the drones. So this is going to be new territory for.
Well, this is one of those things
stuff.
where it's so new that people just basically do stuff because nobody's gotten caught doing it, or nobody's gotten in trouble doing it yet, and now people are getting in trouble.
Yeah.
And is that different from anything else?
No, but this is the time. This is the kind of thing that happens.
Yeah.
This is just what happens, folks.
Yeah. I mean, of course, it's like it's pretty much like bound to happen. I mean, you could do things like drone flying education, but that won't like reduce it down to like 0 cases necessarily.
Well, it's like driving education.
Yeah.
Or like, certainly haven't done away with all car accidents.
Yeah,
and stupid drivers.
But you've done the best you can.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's definitely a thing that's going to be interesting going forward, especially as a technology and these things start to come down in price. Something.
Yeah, $200 entry level. That means almost anybody can do it.
Yeah. Well, without for the people.
Let's get away from the outdoor stuff. That stuff's dangerous.
Yeah, let's stay. Yeah, I
Stay
know.
inside.
Stay inside. Let's stay inside, where we talk about a couple of news reports about the Scorpio and the other thing. The other Xbox thing.
The Scorpion, or the Xbox One, the thing that's kind of like
I think there's
Netflix.
I think there's 3. Yeah, the Netflix thing for games on the Xbox One. Well, a couple of things actually have happened with the Xbox Scorpio. One is Microsoft's clarifying the Xbox Scorpio frame rate and fidelity stance, basically saying it's up to the developers.
Yeah,
and it's not their technology that's going to potentially limit these games.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So there were false reports saying that Microsoft was demanding developers have a special limitation on the frame rate for the Scorpio versus the One and PC. That
it was going to have to be higher or something.
Let's see here.
So. Will not force developers to ensure there's a frame rate parity.
Essentially, that they wanted to ensure that there is. That they wanted to make statements saying that there was a frame rate parity was what people were saying.
Yeah,
in that one is limited to a certain frames per second.
So basically, like if you were going to buy Star Wars Battlefront 2, and you play it on the Xbox One, it's going to be limited to 30 frames per second,
as opposed to the Scorpio when it comes out. It's going to be 60 frames. And then it has unlimited frames on the PC.
Oh yeah.
And the major problem here is that between the One and the Scorpio, which are going to be using the same servers and the same netcode, if you're going to be playing these things competitively at any rate, you want to be on the Scorpio if there's a parity.
Yes.
You want to be able to have the most frames per second because that gives you the most aim.
Yeah.
That makes you more accurate. That makes you better at the game just because your equipment's better.
Exactly.
Is the notion there? And I don't know really, but. Microsoft has came out. It was on Twitter. Once again, Twitter's not news, but apparently it came out on Twitter. Mike Ibarra of Xbox said, "No, there isn't. That's totally up to the developers. If they want to create a parity, that's them. That's not Microsoft. But the developers probably won't do that at all. If the limitation is there on the One, they're going to make sure the limitation is there on the Scorpio as well.
Yeah,
that's just good design, really.
Well, one of the interesting ones that's going to be coming up. That's really getting the attention right now in regards to all this is Destiny 2. Mm-hmm. They're talking. I haven't heard about it on the Scorpio yet, but I'm hearing Xbox One and PS4 that Destiny 2 is going to have 30 frames per second cap, but on the PC it's going to be 120 frames per second cap.
Ooh.
Or it's like 120, 144. Wow. So, I mean, that's a huge discrepancy there.
Yeah, and yeah, that is going to be like a huge difference right there.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course it will be a huge difference for like if you were to do 60 frames per second on the Scorpio too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I haven't even heard if there's going to be a parity difference between the Scorpio and the Xbox One.
Yeah.
It's just the reports say right now it's like consoles is 30 frames per second and PC is like 120.
Yeah.
And of course, this means that all the console loving people are like blah 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 blah.
Of course.
Blah, 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 blah.
You have to understand that your consoles are always going to be encased systems. They're not going to be as wide ranged as PCs will be, because PCs can always stand a chance of being top of the line, better capability.
Yeah, and I think that this is actually going to cause some more competitive Destiny players to probably switch to the PC.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that, I mean, it is unlikely. I'm not saying it's impossible. It is unlikely that the PC version and the Xbox version of Destiny are going to be in any way communicative with each other. They're going to be two separate pools to play in.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of hard, to be honest, in video game developing when you're doing like multiple platforms, because to be frankly honest, like if you were to do it on like this phone per se, and then on that computer, you're gonna have different resolutions, and then aside from that, you're also gonna need to adjust the graphics so that it will be compatible. So it's gonna be a little tricky if they want to do like per se Xbox Destiny players versus PC Destiny players.
Yeah, and there's been issues with this in the past. I remember one of the first attempts at a cross-platform was Need for Speed Underground by EA, and it was you could play it on the PlayStation 2 against people on the PC.
Weird.
Yeah, and it was
that must be back when they were actually doing the network kits for the PS2.
Yeah, they had network kits, or the PS2 Slim you could buy built-in at that point. And
of course, way back in the heady days of PS2 era, I mean, that was when consoles didn't really have much of an online connection. They were just trying to integrate them, stuff like the Dreamcast and things like that, and just trying to figure out how they could get that online stuff to work. So I could see where there would be probably a push for that, but it probably didn't pan out.
The biggest thing that ran rampant was cheating. Like it's always easier
cheating on a PC game online. What a surprise!
Yeah, it's so much easier to deal with that.
Xbox, you have a limitation because you have the controls to work with.
Yeah. There were actually reports. I remember hearing about cheaters online on Xbox with Halo.
Really. Most of that's lag switching.
Yeah, lag switching and stuff like that, which is essentially turning, like connecting your console to a PC just to cheat at a video game.
Yeah,
which is.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. You can cheat better than that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Well,
Yeah.
The difference is basically the PC people can, basically go Ocean's 11 and, plan the greatest heist in the world. And the console players, when they're cheating, they're like stealing the candy bar out of the convenience store line.
Yeah, go ahead and belittle it as much as you like. Console gaming is still a viable source of gaming.
I understand.
Yeah. So
I just got to give them ribs.
So how about if not cheating, then how about playing cheaply?
Playing cheaply?
Yeah. So it doesn't even have to be confined to video games. Apparently, they came out with another magic combination that completely destroys the game.
Oh, okay.
Magic the Gathering is once again in the news.
Yes.
Oh boy.
So here's the thing with this, and this is probably one of the reasons why I haven't been playing for a bit. Again, at least in standard, or picking this stuff up. So there's a combo, basically, and this is a roulette style combo. Basically, this is after the emergency ban. There's a card that allows you to go through your deck. Marvel Aether Works. For 5 mana, take one of those 6 cards off the top of your deck and put it into play. Which means that if you have a big creature, you could potentially get it out in a couple of turns and then roll face the game if you manage to hit it. So this is like roulette gambling. Now,
but still, I mean, people win at roulette. It's not very common, but it happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is now the go-to deck right now. And I can kind of see this because I played a deck very similar to this during the Innistrad of AC and Ravnica era, where you were playing, where basically you were grinding through your deck and then playing from your graveyard. So it's the same style thing, but this is kind of still the fault of Wizards of the Coast, because we would not be having this issue if they had not rescinded changing the standard cycle from like basically a 1.5-year rotate back out to a 2-year rotate. Because the cards that are causing the issues now are the ones from Return to Zendikar. So it's the big monster cards in there, the ones that are like 11s and 13s.
So you're saying
whatnot.
because there are more cards to draw from, this is actually what's causing the issues?
Kind of. This is poor planning, actually, because originally when they set out these sets, they plan out sets like a couple of years in advance. And they had said, okay, we're going to this 18-month cycle. So basically, once this happens, there's only going to be about 5 to 6 sets in a rotation at a time versus 5 to 8 is what it was going on before. So at this point, if they stayed underneath those rules, the 2 sets from Return to Zendikar would be out, which had your big cards in it, such as like Olamog, the Ceaseless Hungerer.
That's a familiar name.
It is.
Yeah.
Because those were the original. Those were the big Zendikar baddies.
Big baddies that can kill an opponent in like 2 turns.
Yeah, they're like indestructible. They cost like anywhere between 11 and 15 mana to get out.
If you let the game go long enough where they get that out, you deserve to lose.
Yeah.
Essentially. And now they can get it out in like first turn if they're extremely lucky.
Well, within
first 2 turns.
Within 4 turns or whatnot. And the thing is because of this basically roulette card that has counters, and you spend the 5 counters, and basically it gets a counter every time a card goes to your graveyard. That once you get that, it's called like Aether Masterworks or something like that. It allows you to potentially gamble and pull this card and get into play. Then it's like roll face your opponent with this indestructible creature. And like I said, if Wizards had stuck by the 18-month cycle, this card would not be a problem right now. But because halfway through, because they changed it back to a 2-year cycle, they screwed themselves and did not foresee this combo coming.
Well, I meant that there are a lot of design decisions that are necessary when it comes to try and sell the same game back to people over and over and over again. Because that's essentially what they do, is they come out with a new edition every how many months now? On the realm of months. They're not even waiting a year to come out with a new version of this game.
A new set always comes out typically every 3 months.
Yeah, but they've been reselling this game to people for so long that these mistakes have happened to the point where they have actually added in and written out entire themes of play. We've had, they got rid of poison counters, they got rid of phasing, they got rid of the cards that you could
banding,
banding and transform. What was the ones like the first strike life regenerators or.
Those still exist.
And back when we were playing, I noticed the major theme in all of it was token generation.
That still exists too.
Yeah, that still exists too. But all of these things, I mean, there's just a matter of time when you're releasing edition after edition after edition that these exploitable things are going to come up. And playtesting is just, especially when you're pushing them out as fast as Wizards is. I imagine it's Wizards that's still in charge of this. Is that they're under a deadline to get to try as many combinations as possible. And you can run computer simulation after computer simulation. You can have people play it until they're blue in the face, but these people are looking for obvious flaws, not operational flaws between sets.
Well, they're supposed to be, and Wizards has been really good up until I would say when they made these drastic changes. And Wizards of the Coast has had to acknowledge okay, we screwed up, and it's actually shaken some consumer confidence. And this is not the first time this has happened.
Yeah.
But it's like we go from there's been basically 3 overpowered game-breaking decks within the last year, whereas you have to pretty much play this or that's it. And we've had emergency bans, and this has not really happened in like over 5 years, 6 years, where the format's just been so busticated.
I will have to admit, the only reason I'm a little salty about it is because I grew up playing Magic in high school, and I just got back into it and kind of felt how different it was compared to the original game that I used to play. And this is still a very viable and entertaining game. This is a game that when people approach it, should have no trouble getting in and playing it, even if they come across somebody who's been playing all their life, or for the life of the game. And I understand they want to keep it fresh and keep coming out with new reasons and new ways to play. So, I'm just committed to holding them accountable to make sure that this game remains having that standard of playability.
Well, the good thing is, over the last week, they've at least said they're rolling out a new play design team. The explicit intention is to improve the quality of the tournament play, and that's where a lot of these issues are.
Good.
They've actually hired two people who have played competitive Magic. The people that look for the exploits when they are building the decks. These are the guys that build the decks that everybody net decks off of, essentially. Melissa DeTora and Andrew Brown. And these have been top 8 Pro Tour players multiple times.
Congratulations, guys. Playing a game actually got you a career.
Hey, it's like, what was it? John Finkel went from playing Magic to being a pro poker. What's the Texas Hold'em?
Texas.
Yeah, he went to be a pro player there, and he's a big Texas Hold'em player now. So, people, if you're good at card games,
keep going.
Yeah.
Just not card games, any games. If you think you're good at them, keep getting better.
Yeah.
Especially ones that have competition behind them.
Oh yeah.
So,
yes.
But we're not advocating gambling here either.
Yeah, don't
folks.
gamble.
Don't
unless you're good at gambling.
Gamble, kids.
Yeah.
Gamble responsibly.
The only time you win at gambling is if you own a casino.
Yeah. That's always how that is, right?
Yeah, it's always how it is. So it is still con season. We're still smack in the middle of it.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got some major con news. It's probably already bubbled up on most people's radar.
Yes.
But yes, in the Phoenix Comic-Con.
Phoenix Comic-Con just happened. It was a 4-day event.
The police had to respond to an incident of a man carrying multiple real weapons, making threats, especially towards the police, that he intended to harm them. And so they had to go in and deal with this man. It has led to mass changes through all of the Comic-Cons resounding after that, including our local Comic-Con, Albuquerque Comic-Con, has decided to ban all weapons entirely. Even fake ones, even painted Nerf guns, even foam bats.
Weird.
Then the statement they made is that this is because
that's weird. What harm is a little Nerf dart gonna do besides hit the wall?
It's really just sort of no splitting hairs kind of situation. They can't just ban some weapons and not other weapons, even if they're obviously safe.
Yeah,
it's just a overall blanketed thing because it's real easy. It could be real easy to somehow make a real weapon look like a fake or a toy weapon.
Yeah.
Well, this is already this is already starting to cause some stir up in the community around here because they're like, what's if. Was it like a wand? Is a wand a weapon? Is a staff a weapon?
Is a stick a weapon?
A stick a weapon. It depends. I mean, if my mom beat me with a stick, that was a weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then there's the whole back in the day, the whole TSA ruling where like you weren't allowed to carry things on the planes like nail clippers and stuff like that. And that spawned the statement: if you can take over an airplane with a pair of nail clippers, you can do it without the nail clippers.
Yeah.
Like. That's
anything.
Yeah, anything. Really.
Anything. Everything is banned.
For a while there, the TSA was doing that. They were like basically saying you can't carry anything on the plane. Unless it is very obviously and provably safe. Like even your shoes were suspect.
Well, part of this is just a really big knee-jerk reaction because, I mean, considering there was a shotgun, multiple knives, and other guns.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not the first time this has happened, per se. It's just this one hits really close to home because it's like the next state over.
Yeah.
And, it's like there was a guy, I think a year or so back, that was threatening to go to a Pokemon tournament or Pokemon convention type thing, and they on social media, and they caught him with weapons in the trunk of his car, trying to get in.
Yeah,
and basically he was going to cause
an incident.
Yeah, at a Pokemon tournament.
And unfortunately, at this time of year, within the wake of things like the recent events in Manchester at the Ariana Grande concert, and now this thing at Phoenix Comic Con, I mean, there's no reaction like overreaction.
Yeah.
Really, and that's just to ensure the safety of all people that are coming, because it is a wide venue. It is going to have a lot of people there, and unfortunately, with these rulings, they have said if it makes you not want to come, then don't come.
Yeah,
because this is going to be.
I think one of the things is this is going to detract like some of the Deadpool cosplays or like the Overwatch cosplays.
Mm-hmm.
Basically anything from like per se like that's based off of like a shooting game, because of course they have weapons involved.
Yep. And it does hurt accuracy when it comes to that cosplay, and that does hurt cosplay in general.
I think the thing is instead of just being like ban all fake weapons, we just need to be like figure out like some way to identify so that we know like what is a real gun per se, as opposed to like just a prop gun. You know what I mean?
Back in the day, I mean, I remember being able to buy like full on like water guns, automated water guns and things like that looked like the real thing. Like all the way down to the painting and everything like that. Like in some cases, they were made of metal. Like certain pellet guns and things like that looked as real as any other weapon out there. And then somewhere along the line, there came the limitation of they had to have some way of identifying them. They had to have like an orange tip, or very obvious paint markings and things like that.
Yeah.
That would tell anybody looking at it from a glance that is considered a quote unquote safe weapon.
And the thing comes from this historically too. I remember the drastic change with this happened when this happened in like the late 80s. A kid got shot by a police officer because he had pointed a laser tag gun at the officer, and the officer just reacted and shot the kid. It's very, very tragic.
Yeah, I remember that.
And that's where the orange tips started to come, and then and making the guns look more fake,
toy-like, yeah.
And it was the laser tag gun already was kind of fake-like looking, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, what is it gonna do? Is it gonna like hit the just gonna hit the shield?
Yeah, I mean, it's like kid points laser tag gun. I mean, you get an IR beam in your face.
Which is as much as you've been getting, like hitting the channel clicker.
Yeah, then I think BB guns and airsoft guns were like the next thing. There were some incidents with those, and that's why those are all supposed to be orange tipped. But we've even had incidences since those rules got put in place.
Yeah, like
where
it's really hard to see that
kids are popping off the orange tips.
Yeah.
And so
or
then
even if it is bright orange, it's really hard to see that in an instant sort of a critical thinking situation.
Yeah.
And then. Crap.
You lost your train of thought?
I lost my plot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
move on.
With Comic-Con, I mean, it's like that's the thing, like you said, Sean, is the weapons are going to kill a lot of the cosplays. But you also have, people have already started to talk about this in regards to Albuquerque and Santa Fe. It's like, what about the people with staves? Is Gandalf's staff a weapon?
Yeah, exactly.
I imagine if it can be used as a weapon. Yeah. I imagine if it can be used as a weapon, like Casey Jones carrying his hockey sticks. Like, where are you going to draw this? They're just going to be a blanket policy. Look, if this is the point I was going to make, is if a school can ban a child for chewing a Pop-Tart into the shape of a gun, then Albuquerque Comic-Con can ban anything that can be even reasonably swung as a weapon. I'm surprised they're not asking us to remove our shoes as we go in.
You hear that here, folks. Yeah. No Hulk cosplays, because you can swing your fist as a weapon at that point.
Yeah, no whole cosplay.
Yep.
Just buy a mask. No, you can't even use a mask. Those can be weapons.
Yeah.
You throw it hard enough.
No Sailor Moons, because,
Yeah.
I mean, that wand's a weapon.
Yeah.
I mean, but granted, I mean, I know there's going to be a lot of discussion with this, and I'm sure they're going to figure out what needs to be done. Because, I mean, obviously people that go to the extremes already have been like, but a wand's a weapon, and Jim Burleson's been like, come on, folks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's
It's a little bit of common sense.
yeah.
But
Has he weighed in on this? Have we?
he, not fully officially, but
Maybe if we get him, we'll see what he says.
there was a KOT story I saw in regards to this, and I know he posted it. I don't know if he actually talked on it because I haven't had time to watch it.
yeah.
But I know he's already actively getting on Facebook, getting talked to in regards to this or whatnot. And he has said that at the Albuquerque Comic Con that the weapons are banned. So I mean, technically, he has weighed in on it.
It's not just cosplay weapons or people bringing in weapons. It's even they usually have vendors there selling replicas and prop weaponry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now they're allowed to sell those.
Yeah, that's gonna be interesting too.
Yeah, they have to set up a way where the person is actually given their weapon outside of con, where they're escorted to a point where they can actually, like, the weapon itself is taken to their vehicle or something like that.
It is kind of weird. You know?
And that's we've seen little crossbow guns be sold at these things.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen
Anything you can see at a gun show or a flea market is usually somewhat available there. I'm not talking
not like as in the actual thing,
Yeah.
but like as a prop.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, as the props. It's like there's crossbows we've seen sold, and crossbows are dangerous. I mean,
oh yes, very.
There's the swords, there's the prop swords that are sold. I mean, a keyblade is dangerous.
Yeah.
in the wrong hands.
Look, even a dull sword is still a metal bar.
Yeah.
I mean, you swing that hard enough, it doesn't matter if it's sharp or not.
Yeah. Or it's like some of the steampunk stuff. Like there's like a syringe type thing that is used as part of the cosplay for like Fallout 4.
Yeah.
And that
looks lethal.
can be dangerous in the wrong hands.
But even then, the steampunk people have like flintlock pistols and
Yep.
Other bits and filigree and things like that could be ostensibly. There's a lot of leather work there too.
Yeah. The Assassin's Creed blades for the arms or the
wrist blades.
wrist blades.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are sold at the cons, and that's the thing. And I
It's
think
a slippery slope, I think. It's because once you start like identifying things that are weaponry, you can also start identifying things that are improvised weaponry. Like, okay, what about the straps of messenger bags?
Yeah.
Those are pretty lethal in the wrong hands.
or bike locks.
Or bike locks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really is just like once we start identifying what's dangerous and then we realize that everything is dangerous.
The whole world around us is dangerous.
It's like, no fun. No fun anywhere.
No fun. You can't stay inside. You can't stay outside. You have to stay between the doors. Okay.
Oh, man.
Oh man.
What a weird, wild world we live in.
I know, right?
But I know. I said I know Jim's already deep into these conversations, probably with the vendors and everything else already, because of the conversation I'm already starting to see show up on Facebook. But the rule right now is, at least for the Albuquerque Comic Con and potentially for Santa Fe, is
Weapons banned.
Weapons banned.
Yeah.
Anything even remotely close. You can't even have like a CNC weapon cut out of a piece of wood.
Really?
No Pop-Tarts cut, like, bitten into the shape of guns.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Now you're being a little absurd.
Yeah.
That's absurd.
So, but no, it's like
Not even making a little finger gun. Like, sorry, I just pointed a weapon at you.
So this reminds me, and this was just one more point on in this stuff.
I'm sorry, but we'll have to cut your fingers off.
there was a guy, I think it was in Austin, Texas, who was walking around with a prop sniper rifle from, I believe, Halo, and had the police called on him.
That makes sense.
Because the thing is the average person doesn't necessarily understand. But this thing is like
It's huge.
6 feet tall.
Yeah, the sniper rifle in Halo is a massive weapon.
Yeah. And so, this was because of the, it was part of the Bungie studio thing and whatnot, but people did not understand that this is a prop gun from a game. So,
No, all I see is it's a big, dangerous looking gun.
Yeah.
And the bigger the gun is, the more dangerous it is as far as people are concerned.
So I guess my big thing from this, I mean, because there's plenty of examples of this happening over time, is don't get mad at the cons for banning the weapons, but you can work to educate them and hopefully get them to potentially change policies some.
Exactly.
You know, but at the same point, it's not like, you know, I'm going to take my guns and I'm going home, you know, because they're going to go good now.
They'll be like, okay, bye.
Yep.
And you have to understand, Albuquerque Comic-Con and Santa Fe Comic-Con are the two biggest cons of this time of year.
Yeah.
For this area, really.
Yeah.
And so you're not going, oh darn. Plenty of other people are going to.
Yep.
It's just the way it is.
Yeah, so just get creative with your cosplay in the meantime, you know, and hopefully some rules or stuff will be put in place.
Yeah, just don't let anybody figure out that books are dangerous.
Oh,
these boxes are dangerous. They can chop you.
Yeah. Oh, let them figure out that those boxes are dangerous. No pop vinyls at a con. Nobody will go.
Oh, those paper cuts. You know? So instead of talking about books, let's go talk about net neutrality, because the internet's also a dangerous thing.
Oh, of course.
Of course.
Everything's dangerous. No fun.
Yeah, no fun.
No fun.
So, Sean, you're wanting to talk about the net neutrality stuff, correct?
Yes. Mainly what I so from what I've heard, like, there's the it's already it was brought up like a couple of years ago, because they at one point wanted to repeal, the FCC wanted to repeal the rules of net neutrality, and apparently that's coming up again.
Mm-hmm.
And then because the FCC chairman, the new one, Ajit Pai, wants to repeal, I think it's like Rule 2 or something like that.
Title 2 from 2015.
Mm-hmm.
Title 2 from 2015, yeah.
So the thing behind this is a lot of the net neutrality stuff is kind of falls underneath the Title 2, and it's Title 2 is the internet's kind of been wedged into this Title 2 underneath as a telecommunications act type thing, and that's where the telecommunications is basically, there's a lot of regulation in there about what they can and can't do, and these were put back, and these original rules were put in place underneath the Ma Bell days, basically.
The Depression era Ma Bell, when they broke apart AT&T to kind of jumpstart the economy in general.
Well, they had such a chokehold on it, and with everything else, and basically there were some shady things that AT&T was doing at the time in regards to having that monopoly. So there's things that they could do to help push the little people out of the market, and man, I have a semi deeper understanding than most people about it, because I've actually worked for a independent telecommunications provider, and there are a lot of rules there that say, you know, they have to allow these little guys to go across their lines.
Yeah, you have to allow them regardless, and that's kind of what basically the idea of net neutrality is. You should have equal access to, like, VidMe as you should YouTube,
right?
And it's gotten to the point where, like, some of these companies will, like, instead of just like lobbying for it, it's now gone to the point where they just go, let's just break the rules. Like T-Mobile, like because I remember at one point, like, T-Mobile was throttling with, like, internet video streaming services.
Yep. And but they throw out across the board.
Yeah.
And that was basically because across the cell towers.
Yeah.
And there's
it's sort of a bend the rules kind of situation.
Yeah.
Like the real thing about it is, and I always said this going into it, is like, there's going to come a point in time where there's so much traffic on the internet that we're going to have to decide which traffic is actually priority traffic. We're probably already at that point, or have been at that point ever since IPv4 stopped being capable. When we were running out of addresses on something that we thought we would never run out of addresses on. We had to come up with an entire new standard, which is still being adopted. Yeah. So, and bandwidth-wise, I can understand wanting to be able to have some sort of priority or say in your priority on that kind of thing.
Yeah, and that's where a lot of this Title II stuff comes from. So Title II, basically a rule from 1930 that things are getting shoehorned into. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're dealing with an 85-year-old regulation, basically. 75, whatever it is.
Something like that.
But
age is old.
Where it applies to the internet right now is it bans on paid prioritization, and that's where people start to get up in arms over net neutrality.
Because a big company like, say, Netflix or Comcast or whatever, or YouTube.
Comcast basically can say, Netflix, you have to pay us if you want to have priority service and get so that people don't get load bars in the middle of the movie.
Low quality buffering, whatever.
And that's the fear.
Yeah.
And the Title II currently prevents service providers from charging different rates for different types of content delivery.
Yeah.
Making, and that's where that all comes down to.
Now, keep in mind, most major big house, like traffic providers or traffic consumption companies, have come out publicly stating that regardless of these rules, when they were enacted, it didn't affect them. And if those rules were to change, that it wouldn't change how they operate on the internet.
That's kind of an iffy thing, you know what I mean?
So it sucks that we can't trust somebody to make that kind of statement.
Yeah. So the argument here for rescinding the rules is that how these rules are currently put up is it basically makes about as much sense as declaring that all packages must be delivered on the same schedule, even if you're willing to pay more to get it there faster. The ban stifles innovation, and that's why they are, trying to rescind. That's the argument against getting rid of the rule. Mm-hmm. But the net neutrality people go, no, now you're just going to, screw people and give more control over to things like Comcast or Google or stuff like that.
Yeah. Like I'm sure if like Google were an internet service provider themselves, they would probably slow down FeedMe a lot and prioritize YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think that's why they made the switch to Alphabet being in charge of a lot of their infrastructure as opposed to Google itself just being the brand that everybody buys into. Yeah. So, I mean, Alphabet, they're trying to keep them separate, and I'm thinking what it is they're trying to maintain some sort of we're all in this together sort of situation. Yeah. But it really is kind of obvious they're positioning themselves in sort of a kind of a, what's the word? Monopoly?
Yeah.
Kind of monopoly?
Kind of an alphabet monopoly?
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is this is where the rules still get weird. Mm-hmm. Telecommunications is still technically localized monopolies.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing people don't necessarily take into consideration because you only typically have a cable company one in your town.
Yeah.
Not really much competition out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is kind of tricky too. As far as mobile service providers, we only have some of the big names ones like AT&T, T-Mobile, Verizon. We don't really have a localized alternative. Except if you were wanting to get ISP, there's probably also Lobo internet services.
Well, here's the thing, and
those come and go.
Yeah,
quite quickly.
I'm actually going to expand upon this some. So the cell phone thing is yes, you have Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, and AT&T all in an area. Okay, typically you have multiple choices. They have multiple towers.
Yeah, those are the major players. Yeah.
Versus your ISPs is typically cable. And telephone. So, in an area like us, is Comcast or it is
CenturyLink.
CenturyLink now, yes.
Yeah.
Those are the
They've changed a couple.
Those are the only two options. If you decide to go with somebody like LoboNet or any of those other local providers, they are still actually bound in going across CenturyLink lines. The rules from Title II allow that to happen.
Yeah.
But, and that's what allows those little guys to exist like that. But when you look at the grand picture, all you're paying for at that point is better customer service essentially
Mm-hmm.
versus having to deal with one of the big ones, because it's like, was it even South Park did the thing where basically they're trying to
Comcast
complain
customer service.
complain to Comcast.
to Time Warner Cable.
Time Warner Cable.
And is like,
He's like, yep.
Oh, you could go somewhere else if you're. Oh wait, you can't. Huh?
Yeah.
oh wait, you can't.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing. The only thing I've seen that's been a market disruptor has been the places actually getting fiber put in, and usually it's where Google fiber is being put in, forces people like Comcast and Time Warner and all to drop their rates because the speed's so much faster on Comcast. So, and even in the whole net neutrality realm, it's like, was it the ones that really kind of pushes in the cell phone providers, where you can pay extra to get not throttled, or you get through their service for music and whatnot, where you watch basically T-Mobile videos or T-Mobile music, and it doesn't count against your data rates.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a cynic, and I've always said this, even though every time people say that's not how that works, and trust me, they're going to find out a way to do it. I'm already seeing it these things kind of being put into place. There's going to come a day and age where you're going to pay for your internet by the bandwidth. You're going to buy a certain amount of gigabytes or terabytes or whatever the going measuring rate is at that point in time. And once you run out of that, that's the end of your service. It's going to be something you refill like gasoline in a car.
Yeah.
And that's going to be you, the personal subscriber. Now, if you're running a business off of that, you have to buy even more.
Well,
but
Comcast is trying to do that right now, and even our area. It's like, if you hit, what is it, like 1 terabyte in a month of downloading,
you get throttled.
you hit the cap, and then you have to pay extra.
But that's a terabyte. I mean,
Or no, maybe it's not a terabyte. Maybe it's a gigabyte. Whatever the number is.
yeah. But still, it's like you have to pay for the bandwidth, pay by the gigabit, or pay by the terabit, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I always I knew this. I saw this coming on back in the days of AOL when I wasn't even on cable internet. I was like, oh, this is a problem.
Oh yeah, like I mean, even AT&T and what was the era? Not Prodigy, CompuServe. Back in the day, it's like you got allotted 500 minutes a month.
Yeah, AOL did that too.
And then after you go over the minute cap, you start getting charged extra minute per month. So
it was something ungodly. It was like $5.99 a minute.
Yeah, and
for the time you were on the internet.
This is everything old is new again. Mm-hmm. But we're straying a little here because we're talking about context and all behind the net neutrality.
So Title II is even older than these services.
Yes,
even the services that have been outdated. And even then, when Title II was enacted on the internet on net neutrality, it was sort of a stopgap, in that we saw the potential of things going in this direction, even though they weren't going that direction yet.
Right.
And so they put that into place by saying to say, even if this doesn't look like it's going to happen, if you even think that it's going to happen, it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And now they've got this FCC chairman in place who's trying to make sure that they undo that.
Yeah.
Which looks dubious.
It looks dubious.
Yeah.
But the reason he wants to undo it is to make a better set of rules, or to help some of the innovation on certain things.
Yeah, but things are getting rather quiet on what those new rules will be, or that there are even any new rules in mind.
It's kind of like that. If you're going to remove something, you've got to think of what is going to replace that. If you are planning to replace it, you know what I mean.
And right now, the major argument just seems to be whether or not these rules should be changed at all.
Yeah.
Right now.
So I guess the big question is, like, I mean, what are our feelings basically on this whole net neutrality hoopla? I mean, we've heard there's this thing pops up every couple of months and all. It's like, Sean, I mean, do you think that the net neutrality stuff's good or bad?
I think the net neutrality of the concept itself is good. Yes.
Okay. Do you like the way that they've handled it so far?
I've liked how they're at least like keeping up the regulations, saying that look, you've got to give people access, and however, I'm not too like satisfied with the idea of like just repealing it.
Okay, so basically repealing it underneath the Title II, basically.
Yeah.
Faust, what about you?
Well, I feel that net neutrality is kind of it's sort of a measure after the fact. When the internet was first let out, it was let out completely and freely.
Yeah.
I mean, the concept of the network, the concept of the information being free was something that was established from the start. And it got out so widespread that they couldn't even figure out that it had to be regulated before it was just out there everywhere. So now it's just really the people coming in and figuring out how they're going to control things like the flow of information, the availability of the service. And so a concept like net neutrality, I do think we do need to maintain some sort of consumer or some sort of internet citizen kind of protection that lets them be able to access the information they want without limitation, to be able to consume or share that information and not have to feel like they're violating some rule or some protocol. Now, that said, I mean, I understand it is a limited service. It is finite. So there does need to be some sort of this conversation is going to continue reoccurring. It's going to come in under different names over and over and over again.
It is.
Even if they find a way to make everybody happy, it's still going to be an ongoing conversation.
Right.
So this is not something that people just need to think about solving and being done with. This is something that they need to consider to be a lifelong consideration in their life, and not just their life, but the generations following.
Yeah.
So you're for net neutrality. You're for net neutrality.
Yes.
Okay. But different views. With underneath the regulations of how it should be done.
Yeah.
So I'm actually for net neutrality too, but I'm actually okay with getting some of the government regulations out of the way, or at least redoing them for this new age, because 75-year-old shoehorning this underneath 75-year-old regulations does help stifle innovation. I mean, to be honest, either the rules need to be updated or just kick them down, get them out of the way, because as soon as the big companies have enough, what's that word? Social, I'm forgetting the word, where basically you're socially aware. You don't want to do something bad because that can just hurt you as a company. So I feel a lot of these companies have enough social awareness that they're not going to destroy net neutrality in the spirit of it if the rules are kicked down out of the way, but it will allow certain things to be innovated on, because
I do agree that while I do agree with net neutrality, that FCC or having some sort of governing body be in charge of these rules is also wrong. Because it's not just the companies, or it's an ongoing battle between three separate entities that are pulling on this. Not two, not the companies and not the consumer, but also the government or the governing body that has to make these rules and try to mediate between the two.
And the FCC has been a little bit overbearing with some of the stuff recently too. And this is coming from a person who's actually worked at an ISP, and some of the stuff is just absurd, and it prevents you from being able to set up things like peer connections, where basically you set a peer-to-peer, where you have basically a hop straight from like LA to the ISP, and you can have your customer actually pay more to get that faster hop versus if it has to take like standard hops where it takes like 4 or 5.
Yeah, but this is like big name companies like Wall Street doing it to make sure they have the milliseconds chance to make those buys or sells or something like that.
Well, it's not just that, but for here it's like the movie industry.
Yeah.
If you can set a peer-to-peer one-hop connection where you have less things in the way and less chance of it being throttled to push a large video file from here to LA versus having to stick somebody on a plane with that hard drive and fly it out there, you're saving them time. But because that costs more for that infrastructure, you have to pay more for it too.
I do have to come up with one obscure story, because in some cases, actually having to be able to put the movie on a physical drive saves movies. We almost lost one of the Lord of the Rings movies because of a digital drive crashing during the editing phase. And the only way that they were managed to save it is somebody had actually managed to take a full copy of the movie home on a physical drive to edit it.
You should always have a backup. That's a different story. That's a different story. We're talking about the speed.
But the backup wouldn't have felt so relevant if they had just been able to push the movie file out there like they did.
True.
Yeah. I don't know. There's always an argument to be made, folks. That's the internet.
Well, let us know if you have any thoughts on net neutrality and the context and everything behind that. But I think that's where we're going to end it. We're going to end it at the for this week.
It feels good.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you can listen to us on iTunes. You can listen to us on Google Play in audio format.
Yep.
And
Look for us on VidMe and YouTube.
Yep.
Remember to like, comment, subscribe, upvote, rate, review, all that other fun stuff.
And special thanks to our guest, Sean King, for this week with Sandia Mesa Studios.
Go check him out.
Yes, go check him out on VidMe and go support him also on YouTube.
Yeah, links down below.
Yep.
Yeah.
And do you have anything you want to add, Sean?
Nope.
Okay. Nope.
Yep.
All right. I will call that a show there this week, folks.
See you, folks.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, this is potentially true, but
The internet forgives no faux pas.
yeah.
The fact that he made a mistake is understandable. It's glaringly understandable. He made a mistake in wording. That's where the end of it comes from. I mean, it's not like that's something that anybody at the gate is going to enforce because Jim Burleson says so.